we're just going to hand off to, I believe, Michael, who's going to discuss the background to the CPD.
Yeah, we can do that, Larry.
Okay.
You want to go to slide 2, see what we got to talk about?
Sure.
Who's got control? Is it you, Larry? Yeah, okay. That's a fine place to start. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see a lot of names that I don't recognize, and clicking through and seeing it, it looks like we have a lot of people that are going to be actually entering information in the new database, and it's good to see you here. I hope that this training session gets you where you need to get. We're going to be doing quite a major switchover from the way we've been doing it and the way we will be doing it. So it's good to see everyone here. I guess the thing that I wanted to start off with was this program started out as a couple of pamphlets about 25 years ago or so, and it's grown enormously. In the meantime, there was an iteration where everything was simply a PDF, and those pages would be compiled, printed, so even a time when most of them were seen as printed. A few years ago, we switched over to a little bit of a searchable directory, which is what you're seeing an example of there. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. Still use PDFs, and it had limited searchability. In the last, well, it was maybe a couple of years now. I'm bad at getting those dates right, but we realized that we had to make a decision to move forward into the 21st century, and like other directories that you're familiar with, fill it with real data and make it searchable. We have had a bunch of people working on it, certain work groups that have gotten to, just been part of their life for the last year, trying to get this thing together, going through the standards and looking at the data that, could be represented, the type numbers, the descriptions. So we did extensive work to get all of those fields set up so that we could enter them in into this database that would eventually become our new CPD. There's another step involved, and that's going to be how we present it as a web page. But right now we want to get to, and we are working on that, but we are quite far along in having it available for over half of the standards now are available to enter. What's the next slide before Yeah, so here's another example of what we got. Somebody that's taking bad feedback. I don't know if you know.
Would you be able to get the shipper rocket for me? Thank you.
But here's what we look like for typical PDFs, and we're going to hope that this new database is much more searchable. We constantly wrestled with how detailed it was going to be, and did we go too far or not far enough with the information we're providing? But we think we got a good balance. In the rest of this time, we're going to start talking about how to complete that database. So unless there's anything obvious that I missed, I think we can. What's the next slide look like, Larry?
I think I'll take it from here, Mike. I just want to make sure everyone can hear me clearly. I'm just going to review a couple of slides that will give you a general sense of what we will be, what we have done with the CPD database. As Mike said, there was a lot of work that went into it, and from a number of different people, and there are some advantages to the way in which the new CPD database will operate as compared to the past database with the PDFs. So as you can see, the
I'm
new
on the
database
call
will
for
be
now.
replacing all of the
BHMA.
CPD. I'm sorry, I'm just going to ask that if you are not speaking at the moment, if you can just mute yourselves.
This isn't. Do I have a mute button?
That's all it's got on either one of them. If there's multi-cams,
Okay, so as I was saying, the new CPD database will replace the PDF files that we have been using in the past for certified product listings. And what that will allow us is that'll allow us four key enhancements. And that first one speaks towards consistent management, which speaks about the uniformity of the information that's collected from all manufacturers on a listing or a submission. In the past, a listing might vary in information that's provided from one manufacturer to the next. And so there was a lack of consistency on what details should be provided when creating a listing. And this new CPD is going to create that uniformity and take the guesswork out of what information is needed. Another enhancement is that it strengthens the credibility. The PDFs had limited data and they were inconsistent throughout the lines across the listings, as I stated. And the new CPD is going to strengthen that credibility of products listed as certified. Submission data is going to be reviewed by BHMA and test labs for eligibility, which should help to strengthen that credibility. The next enhancement is that it's going to increase searchability. In PDFs, again, it's static information that can't really be searched as quickly and as easily. There were also lots of limitations. You could see which companies had a listing, had products listed to a specific standard, but beyond that, there was very, very little that you can search. With this new CPD system, we will be able to, you should be able to search by product. The user is going to be able to use the public interface to search for those products, and we're looking to add a variety of types of searches by manufacturer, by standards, by products and attributes. And the last enhancement is that this database is built for the future. Now, we know that the CPD has grown year by year, and it's growing in participants, it's growing in products, and also in standards within the program. And BHMA has built this database that is capable of managing that growth. So I just want to review a couple of basics about the CPD database. It has several different components that all work together in order to allow the CPD to work. The CPD to work as it should. And this slide just illustrates the connection between those different components. The member database contains company and individual information for CPD participants and BHMA members. There's a single sign-on that is used that's provided through the member database. The certification portal, which is next, is connected to that member database. And again, certification portal is only used by manufacturers, labs, and BHMA staff to upload and to certify products. It is not viewable by the public, and it's connected to the next box, that's the product database. And that product database is really what houses all of the product data that's uploaded through the certification portal. It's connected to an API to route the information to the public certified products directory, which we are going to be working on. And that last box, which is the public certified products directory, will be used by the public, used by architects and specifiers in order to search for certified products. So we see that there's a connection by all of these different components in order to help that CPD to work effectively. So currently, BHMA has a number of a number of standards that are currently live. We started with the launch of A156.1 back in May, and that has been live, and we have been receiving upload submissions in order to put those products within the database. We've since then launched a number of additional standards, as you can see in the section that's marked live. We also have a plan to launch the remaining standards, and you'll see those rolled out as soon as the functionality is added to the portal that will allow for the upload of the pending standards. So currently right now you can list in that first box, you'll see A156.1, and if you look down throughout it, you'll see a number of different standards that are currently live and to be uploaded to the certification portal. So the certification portal users are, again, the manufacturers, which will be able to submit products for certification as well as revise their submissions. The test lab also is a user, and the test lab's role, again, is to review that submitted product data and approve or reject submissions. The final user of the certification portal is BHMA staff, and they will approve or reject submissions approved by the test labs. All right. Again, I just want to remind you that customers will not be able to utilize the certification portal. Customers will be using the public search interface. All right. So the required settings for a manufacturer in order to use the certification portal is that they have to have an active user account on BHMA's website. And that user also needs to be listed as an employee of the manufacturer organization, and also that the manufacturer is listed as a CPD organization. And lastly, that user needs to be listed as a CPD certification management role for all of the brands that they need to access. Okay, so if there's any of these things that are missing, then what's going to happen is that you will have difficulty with uploading your information through the portal. In fact, if you don't have an account altogether, you won't be able to log into the portal. So that's the first thing that's necessary. And this is just a slide of the different browser options. There isn't any preferred web browser, but these are the different browser options that we have. And just going really quickly through it, if you want to verify your settings, again, you want to log in on the upper right hand of the BHMA, the buildershardware.com homepage. You want to enter your email and your password. If you haven't gotten that password yet, you want to use reset password. If you've forgotten your password, you can always hit that reset button. If you have any difficulties, you can contact me, Larry, at BHMA, and I'll be more than willing to help you with that. Once you're logged into BHMA, you can click on My Profile. When you get to your profile, you can check to make sure everything is correct. And on your profile check, if you can make any edits as necessary. And if you go down and you click on the tab that says Organizations, you'll see the company brands that you're linked to and your relationship to the company, as seen in this next slide. Now, as you can see in Bob's Builders, Bobby is listed as an employer, and he's also listed as a CPD certification management. So again, that's what's necessary in order for you to utilize a certification portal. If you do not have that access, please contact me, Larry McLean at L McLean, at kellencompany.com, and I'll be more than willing to help you with that. And again, once this just really states that you really need to log in order to reach there. I'm going to turn it over at this time to Erica, who is going to review how to utilize the certification portal in order to upload the products.
Thanks, Larry. I'm just going to get my screen queued. Can you guys see my screen, the user types and roles slide?
Yeah.
Yep, I can see it.
Great. All right. Thank you, Larry and Michael, for that background. Again, my name is Erica Burns. I work for a company called DNR International, and I've been working closely with Larry and Michael and Karen on the BHMA side, as well as the CPD task force members who have been charged with organizing this whole effort and developing the technical structure for the database and the certification portal. So I'm going to talk you guys through the different user types, how to create a submission, and this will primarily be targeted towards manufacturer users. So hopefully this will help everyone who's on the call who needs to be able to create a submission for their company will be able to walk away from this knowing what they need to do, or at least have the resources to figure it out. So as Larry and Michael both said already, I just want to clarify that for this certification portal that we're talking about today, this is not the public-facing one, so customers will not have access to this information yet. For the purposes of today and the certification portal, the only people who can see this information are manufacturer users, test lab users, and BHMA staff users. So the role of a manufacturer is to create and submit product submissions for certification. Test labs either approve or reject those submissions, and they're either representatives from Intertech or UL, and then BHMA staff users also can either approve or reject submissions. So when I say submission, this is probably an unfamiliar term to you all because you're used to the PDF listings that are posted on the BHMA website. So rather than having all of the products that you have certified to a given standard be just listed together on one PDF together, we had to come up with a way for people to easily get certified products into the database that we have designed without having to do them one by one, to kind of avoid that tedious extra time of data entry, but also to make sure that the data is clean and things are lumped together in a way that makes sense. So when you think of a submission, it's pretty much a group of products that are being uploaded into the database together at one time. So we wanted to put some restrictions on what can be uploaded together because we wanted to be able to create some relationships in the database that make sense and also avoid any invalid or incorrect data getting put in together. So the decision that the task force came up with was that a submission is can be inclusive of a family of products, but it can also, one family can have more than one submission that's associated with it. But the basic definition of a submission is it's products that are included on the same test report together. So the test report that's generated by your lab. And so there can be one product on a submission, as you can see in the little circle at the top right, but there could also be multiple products in a submission. And when I say a product, I mean a unique function number or a unique ANSI number, depending on the standard and whether it's relevant for that standard. So that's a submission. I will get into more concrete examples, and hopefully that will help illustrate the point. But before I do that, I wanted to talk about the different types of submissions that we had to create in order to make this system work for what BHMA needs. So we have kind of four basic types of submissions, the first being a new OEM certification. So this new submission is basically a set of products that have never been entered into the database before and that are entered by the original product manufacturer. So something that has been a little bit confusing, I think, for people with our beta launch of the first standard is that our definition of a new quote-unquote certification is a little bit different from what you might think. So this type of submission can either include something that's brand new that you've never had certified through BHMA before, or it can be products that you already have certified, you've already had listed all along on the BHMA website, and this is just the first time you're getting it into this new database. So that's a new OEM certification. The next type that we have is a private label certification. So this includes products that are private labeled, or as you may know better, multi-listed. So it's under a different brand name than the company that actually manufactures the product. And this type of certification submission can only work if the OEM or the original product manufacturer has already fully gone through the certification process through this new database, and the products that are being private labeled are active and listed as certified in this portal. Karen, I think you wanted to just give a quick note on the OEM versus private label submissions.
Right. On the private label, there was some confusion on the way the operations manual was written. So there's been added clarification that the originating manufacturer, the one that you're supplying your product to you, is the one that actually has to certify the product. There was a lot of confusion on the terminology in the operations manual. So it's been clarified. It's always been a rule. Now it's been a clarified rule that the originating manufacturer has to be the one to certify. Since there was some confusion when A156.1 was uploaded, the current EC and board are meeting and waiting for a final decision, which we'll hopefully have by the fall meeting. And the hope is that it will be a 1-year grace period for all of the standards, not just .1. So if you have something in one that you've submitted that's not your product, that was part of the OEM relationship, you would have to go back to your originating manufacturer and have them recertify the product. We don't know if that grace period is going to be a year. We don't know what it is. That's what the suggestion and discussion is right now. Is there any questions? Okay, go ahead, Erica.
Thanks, Karen. Okay, so those two were both new submissions. So again, the OEM certification and the private label certification. The other two are kind of related to things that are already in the database. So the third type that we have in this table is an update or recertification submission. You can use this type of submission to either update data that you realized is wrong in the database for products that are currently certified, or you would use this process if the products that you have in the database are going to expire because it's now been almost 4 years from the original test report. And then the last type is basically if you have submitted any of the above types of submissions and it's gone to the test lab and they rejected it, then you have the opportunity to edit the data that is wrong and then resubmit it for review again. And again, I will go through all of these submissions and some examples of each of them. Okay, so just to give you a better understanding of what the workflow is here going through the certification portal to get a product certified. The very high level steps are that, well, before you even get to this, obviously you're working with your test lab to get your products tested and following the BHMA standards that are appropriate. And then once you get to the certification portal steps, the first thing that you do is the manufacturer has to submit the product for certification. The second step is for your test lab to review the data that was entered, and they either will approve or reject it. Please talk to your test lab about what that looks like, but in general, they will approve things when the data appears to be correct, things are lining up with the test report, model numbers are correct, the test report number and date is correct, and they'll reject it if any of those things appear to be wrong or just don't appear to be lining up. So it's definitely important to communicate with your lab. And then assuming that the test lab approves the submission, it then goes to BHMA staff to review it, and they will either approve or reject the submission as well. I think in general, the expectation is that BHMA will approve your submission, but I think the main reason that it might be rejected is if you haven't paid for your listing to be currently active for this year. Finally, once it's been approved by the test lab and BHMA staff, then your products are considered certified in the certification portal and database, and then they will be active and certified in the system for 4 years from the date of the test report.
So this is Karen. For those of you who have not been attending the meetings and are aware of some of the changes to the operation manual, all of the products have been moved to a 4-year period. If there were 3, they're now on a 4-year renewal. So everything's on 4 years now.
Thanks, Karen. Okay, so that's the basic workflow. Obviously, there are going to be some slight differences depending on the exact situation, but that's kind of the high-level process that you have to go through. And I wanted to give an overview, too, of the different statuses that your product or your submission can have in the database. And this is definitely tied to the certification workflow that we just talked through. So starting at the top, there's a draft status option. So that is a situation where the manufacturer has created a submission, but they haven't yet actually submitted it to the test lab. So the submission and any associated products are just considered draft, and only that manufacturer can see it. Once the product or submission is submitted, then it can go to awaiting test lab review. And if it's rejected, then it's rejected by the test lab, and then it can go back to being a draft submission. So if something is rejected, then the manufacturer is now able to edit it again. But once you have submitted something, you're not able to edit it anymore. So it's very important that you're reviewing things before you click submit. After the test lab review, it goes to BHMA staff, so it can be awaiting their review. Once they've reviewed it, it can be rejected, so it would go back to draft again. Otherwise, it would become certified. And then after a product is certified, if it's been 4 years and you haven't submitted a recertification, it will expire. If you have submitted a recertification and that's complete, then the old version of that product will then be marked as historical, just so we have a record of different products over time. Things aren't just going to be like deleted out of the database after they're expired or after they've been recertified. Or they can be removed, which is something that's very unlikely, but we wanted to build that in as an option in case somebody doesn't pay their participation fees or something appears to be incorrect that wasn't noticed before. BHMA staff are the only ones who have the ability to remove products or submissions. And again, I'll go through some examples and hopefully this will become clear over time. These little lightning bolts here are just showing where user notifications will happen. So we wanted to build out a system where you don't just have to go to the certification portal to figure out if something has happened related to your submission. So each of these little lightning bolts is where there's a trigger that either goes to the test lab or to the manufacturer or to BHMA staff. And I'll talk through that a little bit more shortly as well. Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to do as part of this webinar is provide a demo for each of these types of submissions and just go through the process in a little bit more detail. But before I do that, are there any questions or comments so far? Okay. And feel free to type in any questions in the chat box in the GoToMeeting, and I'll try to keep an eye out on it while I'm talking through things, and we can answer them as they come in. So as Larry was talking about before, to access the certification portal, you have to log in. So if you're on the BHMA website, there's the certification program tab. If you click on certification portal and then log in to access the certification portal, it'll take you to this login page. So I'm going to just log in as a manufacturer user. I'm using a dummy account that is not a real person, and we're just going to use that as an example. So you have to log into the system. If you have a correct username and password, it'll let you in, and then it'll take you to this home page. So once you've logged in, if you click the little person icon in the top right, you can see your specific user information. So here I'm signed on as Wonder Woman. The organization name, so the name of the company that you work for, is listed here as well. And then the type of organization is a manufacturer. So if I was logged in as a test lab as UL, for example, my organization name would say UL and my organization type would say test lab. And then if you click Manage My Profile, it'll take you to the BHMA website. Does someone have a question? I'm just getting a lot of feedback. Okay. Okay, so we are looking at the user icon. If at any time you want to log out, you just click the logout button and then it'll take you back to the BHMA website. So for the rest of the demo, I'm going to use our staging site, so I'm not changing anything that's on the production version of the site. So I'm going to log in here as a manufacturer again, as Wonder Woman. And I'm just going to show you the basic navigation. And you can see here that we have been doing a lot of testing on this site, so we have a lot of dummy fake submission data that we can use to illustrate some of the points. So the homepage is a filtered version of all the submissions that you have, and it's filtering by the types of submissions that are going to be something that you need to take action on in the short term. So as you can see here, all of the ones that are showing for this specific user are submissions that were rejected by a test lab, which means that these submissions and products are not going to be certified until I go back and change something. So that's the home page. You can see what type of submission it is. So this was an OEM submission. There's a submission code that you can use to reference later on if you want to find a specific submission and you have a lot in the system. You can also use that to talk to the BHMA staff or to your test lab if you're trying to talk through a specific example. We have the ANSI standard, the standard year that it was submitted to be certified to, your test lab, your test report number, the date of your test report, and then the expiration date for the submission, which is simply just 4 years from the test report date. And here it says pending because the products aren't yet certified, so they can't really expire until they've been certified. And then we have the status here, which again for all of these is rejected by test lab. So from the home page, you can click on a given submission and it'll show you this submission summary page. So again, it's showing you what type of submission it is, the submission code, what standard it is, and the current status right now says rejected by test lab. And then the test lab provided a note here, and this is just a test example. And in the real world, they would most likely write out a note here that explains what you need to fix before you resubmit. So on the submission page, it's showing a summary of the information related to the submission. All the information at the top is just the submission level, so it applies to every product that's in the submission. So again, it's the test lab, the year of the standard, the test report number, the test report issue date. And all these fields right now, you can edit directly on this page here. So I can realize that I put Intertech, but it was actually UL. I can say, oh, I put 2017, but I think it's 2012. And then if you want to save those changes, you always have to click the Save button in the top right corner. So that's the submission level data, and then we have product level information. So all of the products that are part of the submission, so again, thinking about what is a submission is a grouping of products that were all reported on the same test report. So all of these products were included on test report number 1111 new. And so these are all just dummy examples, so they might not necessarily reflect real products, but the fields that are reported on here, there's going to be a product code that's assigned by the system, similar to the submission code. It's pending because it's not going to show until you have the product listed as certified. You have the brand, and then a couple of different descriptors of brand series, model, function number, and marketing description. And then for this particular standard, this is 26, so continuous hinges, we have an ANSI number, and then we have all of the fields that are derived from that ANSI number. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we do a specific submission example. So these are all the products. You can click on an individual product and you can edit it using this form. So I can change that if I wanted to. I could say, oh, this should be 1, and then I can save it and it'll update. and it'll show you up here that it has been saved. So that was the home page. And again, this is just a filtered version of the submissions page. I'm going to go to submissions, and then this is going to show me every single submission that's associated with my manufacturer and approved brands. So here we have many different statuses. We have way more that are showing here because not all of them are really waiting for my attention. So all of these fields you can filter or sort, that is. You can sort from the latest test report date by the test lab, and then you can also use this drop down here to filter by the status. So let's say I'm coming in and I want to edit some submissions that I had already worked on but haven't submitted yet. I can filter for everything that's draft. And anything that's draft, you can click delete. I can say, oh, whoops, it looks like these are duplicate submissions. I'm going to delete this entire submission, and then it's going to be gone forever. There's a download button that you can use to download all of this information into an Excel spreadsheet if you prefer to use that. And then this new button is how you create a new submission, which I'll get to shortly. I'm just going to go to the products page first. So again, these are all the submissions. And then the products page is just, it's all the same information as the submissions page. It's just at the product level. So presumably you'll have a lot more products than you will submissions. And we tried to use fields that would be universal to every standard, but we know every standard is different. So if there's a situation where a certain standard doesn't have an ANSI number, it'll just say NA. Otherwise, it'll have the ANSI number of the product listed here. And you can click on it, and if you click on it, you can find more information. And if you want to go to the actual submission, you have the submission code that you can use. And then if you go to the submissions page and use the search bar at the top, you can search for that specific submission, and then you can find all the submission information, all the products that were associated with it. Okay, so that's just a basic overview of the navigation, and similar to the submissions page for products, you can also download everything that you have showing into Excel if that's something that you would like to do. So before I go through an example submission, the most important thing I want to highlight is that you have an instructions manual that you can download from the website. And this instructions manual is going to be really important for you to understand all the things that are being reviewed in today's webinar, and also just use it as a point of reference for when you're using the system in real time. So I won't go through all of it, but there's kind of the basics that we already talked about. There's specific step-by-step instructions for creating submissions. Those step-by-step instructions are for manufacturers, test labs, and BHMA staff. And then one of the most important things for manufacturer users is this appendix that has specific guidance on the upload spreadsheet. So it talks about fields that are universal to all submissions, and then it talks about fields that are specific to a particular standard. So I'm going to start off first with an OEM submission. So I clicked that new button. Now I have to select what type of submission I'm going to do. I'm going to do a new certification, and then I am the OEM. So I'm going to click that, and then I have to select which standard I'm going to use. So for this example, I'm going to use 37, which is multi-point lock, and click next. And then it'll take me to this page here where I can choose a file to upload, and once I upload it, it'll get that data into the database. To get the file that you need to fill out the information for that standard, you have to click the download submission form on this little pop-up. I'm going to download it, and then we're going to walk through the fields that are listed on here. So here's an example of the spreadsheet, and it's very important to note that every single standard has a slightly different spreadsheet. So if you certify to 37, but also 8, you need to make sure that you're downloading the submission form that's specific to that particular standard. It will reject anything if you filled out the wrong submission spreadsheet. And so if we're looking in this user manual, this is where you can find some specific guidance about the upload spreadsheet. I'm not going to go through each thing individually because we don't have enough time, but this has a listing of all the fields that are listed in the spreadsheet. So I'm just going to pull up the spreadsheet again. You can see we have the standard, standard year, test lab, performance test report number. There's a description of what each of those things is and the validation that's going to be performed on it. So this is an example of the spreadsheet. I'm just going to pull up an example one that I've already filled out just to make things faster. So I filled this out, and then I'm going to now upload it. So I'm going to select what needs to be uploaded. And here we go. So I selected the spreadsheet. One important thing to note is that it lists here, right here, which brands you're authorized to submit for. So when you're filling out the brand here, you have to put the exact brand name that is listed on the page here. If there's any typo or anything different, it's not going to work. So I'm going to click upload, and what happened here is I got an error showing me that I didn't put the correct information in the spreadsheet. So if you ever have an issue in the spreadsheet, it'll give you an error message and it will not upload it to the database. And these errors are telling me that I appear to be missing a value for the certified to 156.41 field, and I also don't have permission to access ABC brand. And the reason is I put ABC brand, but I actually only have access to brand ABC. So again, the exact wording and letters and numbers are very important, or else it's going to get rejected. And you can see here, I was supposed to put something in here, but I left it blank, and that's why it gave me an error. So I'd have to fix it. So I would fix this to brand ABC, and then I would try again. So once you get an error, you can just choose another file. Here's the one that's supposed to work, so we're going to upload it. So you can see now that everything that was in the spreadsheet is now in the database, and it's now being displayed on this page. So you can see that these are the products that I had on here. If I realize that I had something wrong, I can click on the product and I can change it. So it's actually grade 2. I'm going to save it, and then I don't have to use the spreadsheet at all anymore. I can just use this front end interface. And then let's say I wanted to add a new product because I realized I forgot one that was listed on the test report. I'm going to select the brand. Let's say it's model 123 like the other ones, and then I'm going to do 123C. And then I have to select the grade. Let's say I want to hit save. It's not going to let me save because it's showing that the field is required. So I'm going to say no, and then save. And then that third product is now showing up here. So let's say everything is all good. I know everything's correct. I've double checked everything. It's the correct test lab, test report number and date. Once I'm ready and 100% sure everything's correct, I'm going to hit submit. It's going to ask you to confirm. You're going to say yes. And then at that point, the status has now changed from draft to awaiting test lab review. And then it'll have to work through that certification process that we were talking about before, where the test lab has to approve it and then BHMA staff have to approve it. Okay, that was an example of an OEM submission. I know we only have about 13 minutes left, so I'm going to go through a private label submission and a recertification submission really quickly. And then if people want to stay on longer, I can go through other examples. So I'm going to go back to the submissions page. I'm going to create a new submission. And actually, before I do that, I want to show you an example of a certified submission. So this one, for example, the status is certified. So it's been approved. And so now it has this product code. And the product code is very important for a private label submission because the private label is going to just borrow all of the performance information from the OEM submission and apply it to a new brand name, and you just change the marketing information. So if you're a private labeler, you have to have this product code by your originating manufacturer in order to do any kind of private label submission. So I'm going to go new. It's a new certification. This time I'm going to click private label. And again, I have to make sure that I'm downloading the correct submission form. So I'm going to download that. And then I'm just going to pull up one that I already have filled out in the interest of time. So here's the private label upload spreadsheet. This is the same for every single standard. So we wanted to make it as uniform as possible. So you have to fill out all the brand and marketing information, and then you have to put in that OEM parent product code that I was just showing you on the certified OEM submission. So I'm going to select that to upload. And I'm going to show you an example of one that is not going to pass. So this is going to give you an error message. And the problem is that this product code is not actually associated with any currently certified product. And I'm looking at it and I realized that it was actually supposed to be an N at the end. So I'm going to fix the spreadsheet. I'm going to select it again, and then I'm going to upload it. So I click upload. So now it's gone through. You can see all the summary information. And what's really useful about this is that you can now see that you have the OEM product code that you entered, but now all of this associated performance information is populated for you based on what the OEM has already uploaded. So you as a private labeler don't have to enter any of this information, it just shows up for you automatically. So let's say this all looks good. I'm going to go ahead and click submit because I'm happy with it, and then it's going to be sent to the test lab for review. And again, the status changes to awaiting test lab review. One important thing to note is the 4-year period of certification for OEM submissions is based on the test report date. But for private label, it's also based on the test report date of the OEM submission. So you need to work with your OEM or originating manufacturer to make sure that they're keeping their listings active. Otherwise, your products that have been private labeled of theirs are also going to expire. Okay, the last example I'm going to give is a recertification. So let me just show you. So this is the one I'm going to recertify. I have a submission that's certified to 12. There are 2 products in it, and it looks like the test report that I had was from 2015. So you can see here that all of these are going to expire unless I do a recertification submission after I've already retested. So I'm going to do recertification. I'm going to pick the standard, which is 12. And then I have to download all of the products that are eligible for recertification. So what I'm downloading is a list of all of the certified products that I have for 12. So here is, let me download it really quick. We'll look at the list. So here are all the products that I currently have certified to 12. Let's say I'm only trying to recertify these 2. So the guidance here, as you can see, it says, please select the entire row of products you do not want to recertify and delete before uploading. So before you upload it, you want to delete all the things that aren't relevant for the submission. So I'm going to delete all of these, and now these are the ones that I care about, and these are the ones that I'm going to try to recertify. So I would save it, and then I'm going to upload that file. So what it's doing now is it's created a recertification submission. Because it's a recertification, you have to put in a new test report number. So let's say my test report number is today's date with Intertech. And then I have to select the date of the test report. And then I'm just going to double check that all this information is correct before I submit it. So I'm going to save this because I updated the test report number. And then I'm going to click on these and I'm going to say, oh, I realize that this one is actually grade 1. And I'm going to hit save. And then I'm going to say, okay, these look good. I'm now going to submit it to the test lab. And now it's just awaiting test lab review. And again, I just want to reiterate, once you have submitted something, you cannot edit it any further. So you can see that all these fields, I'm clicking on them and I can't change anything. I can look at this, but I can't change anything. So it's really important that you get it right the first time. So those are just some quick examples of each of the submission types. One example that I can give of something that's rejected by the test lab that you're resubmitting is you click on rejected by test lab. Because it's rejected, now this opens up these fields again and you can re-edit them. And let's say they told me that the only reason that it was rejected was because I had it as 2014, but it should be 2019. I'm going to save it and then I can just submit it again and they can review it again. Okay, so going back to our PowerPoint, we just have a couple things to close out and then we should have time for a couple questions. So again, the notifications are going to come to you over email, and these are the triggers as a manufacturer user. So if your submission was approved by the test lab or rejected, you'll get an email. It's going to look something like this. It's going to say it was approved by the test lab or rejected by the test lab, and then it'll say some information about that submission. So I wanted to point out to you the resources that you have available. The user manual, like I already went through, is available for download on the portal itself. I would strongly encourage anybody who's going to use the portal to download the manual and read it as much as you can stand, and definitely review the upload spreadsheet guidance in Appendix A. That will definitely help preempt any problems you might have. You also have the BHMA website, so if you go to Certification Program, click Certification Portal, then there's some resources listed there. So this webinar, I believe, will be posted on here if you want to rewatch it. The slides that we're presenting today are going to be posted up there as well. And in the slides, I have some step-by-step instructions. If you don't want to watch the webinar and do the demo, the slides give a little bit of information about how to create a submission, and obviously the user manual too. A couple tips that I wanted to share on troubleshooting are related to some of the main things that we've seen so far. First of all, login issues. If you have an error or if something just doesn't seem to be working when you log in, just refresh and try again. And then also confirm that your user settings are correct. And I have a reference to the page in the user manual where it explains the user settings. For issues loading a page, again, just refresh and try again. If you're still having problems, log out, log back in and try again. And then if you're having issues with uploading the spreadsheet, it's very important that you're reading the error message if you're getting one. Make sure that you're trying the correct type of submission that we've explained. Make sure you selected the right standard. Like I said, if you're using the wrong spreadsheet for a particular standard, it's just not going to go through. Make sure you have the correct spreadsheet for that standard and submission type. And so you should always be downloading it from that little window that pops up when you're working through the new submission workflow on the website. And then finally, if you really think that you've done all these things correctly, but you're still getting an error, you should double check the spreadsheet that you uploaded and confirm it against the error message like we did before when we were saying the brand looked like it was wrong. Also look at the user manual for that guidance on each of the spreadsheets and just confirm that everything is complete and has a valid entry and that there isn't just like random text or words or something on other parts of the spreadsheet that shouldn't be there. That can potentially cause problems for uploading. So if you've done all of those things and you're still having trouble, then you're welcome to report bugs that you find or just feedback on the system. Like Larry said, you can email him directly. If you don't have his email address, it's here, or you just click the contact button at the bottom left corner of the page on the certification portal. And when you're reporting things to him, just make sure you're providing as much information as possible about what you were trying to do and what happened, and try to include screenshots and kind of step-by-step narrative information to help him and me try to recreate the problem and figure out what's going on. So just an example of what feedback that's not particularly helpful or useful for us to help you are things like, it doesn't work, I couldn't click the button, I can't access the site. That doesn't really give us any information that we need to help fix it for you. So a good example is when I clicked the link you provided, it opened up a Google Chrome window and it said this site can't be reached, and then I've provided a screenshot. So that just helps me understand better what needs to be fixed. So a good example of how to structure your feedback is when I did X, it did Y, but I expected it to do Z. Okay, so that concludes the demo and the description of the system, and I think Karen was just going to give a quick overview of some of the next steps and the timeline going forward. Karen, are you still there?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was on mute. The timeline for submitting the listings to the database, we're going to try to be done by the end of the year. But those that were in group 2 and 3 are ready to go. Additional standards that you saw that are still pending are in groups 4 and 5, I believe, and are being worked on. The public-facing directory, we started work on that, and an outside group of users has been selected to help us. We have some architects, some spec writers, some product managers, a few individuals that helped us create the fields for the database are involved in that, and you'll be hearing more about that as we move through it. One other item is the PDS in the existing database. While the database, the old database and the new certified product directory base will run parallel, we're expected probably after the first of the year to make a decision about when to shut the old one down. And in doing so, a decision that's on the table, it'll be announced probably at the fall meeting, is when we will no longer accept PDS into the old system for any standard. So look for that date, because it is a key date for when you're doing your testing where you have to put your data. We prefer you put it in the new CPD. That's where we need it, because eventually you will have to move it when we shut the old one down. But there will be a date when we won't accept PDS anymore, even though the old database will continue to run. Okay, thank you. Erica?
All right, I think that concludes everything that we wanted to present today. I'm happy to open it up for questions. I know we're at about time, but I'm happy to stay on for a little bit longer to help answer questions. I didn't see anything in the little chat box on the GoToMeeting as I was talking through things, but Larry, if there was something that came to you, just let me know and I can help answer.
I have a question, Erica.
Sure.
For the, I understand if you have a private label and you're essentially multi-listing your OEM's test data or their approval, if the private label holder is actually doing the testing, then you do not need that connection at all. Is that correct? In other words, the private labeler can test the product themselves and just list themselves. Does not need to go back to the original manufacturer.
So in order to get that performance information that came from the manufacturer, so remember you just put that little OEM parent product code in there, you definitely need to talk to the OEM to get that code that was generated through the database. Otherwise, you won't be able to go through with the submission, because you won't be able to associate the OEM's performance with your product's performance. And it's something that's worth asking the OEM to talk to their test lab about too, because every submission will go to the test lab to confirm. And I think in some cases, the test labs will issue like an engineering evaluation report, which we didn't include as a required field in the submission, but it might be something that would be useful for them to reference if they just need to confirm that it is in fact the same as the OEM product.
Okay, if the OEM is not testing it, the private labeler can test it though, right? I mean, that's the way it's been in the past, that if you're purchasing a product, you can test it yourself and list it yourself, and it has nothing to do with the manufacturer. The manufacturer just makes the product.
So
Karen,
this is Karen.
that one?
Yeah, so that's not actually correct. The language just wasn't very clear in the operations manual. So there's been some change in the language. It was always meant that the originating manufacturer be the one to do the testing. They have control over what changes are in the product. The purchasing manufacturer does not. So the originating manufacturer is the one who has to certify. We realized that was some confusion when we talked about hinges in .1. So there will be some sort of a grace period for all standards, but the originating manufacturer after a period of time will have to be the one, or yours will not be, your certification would be rejected.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Dave, don't worry about it. It hasn't been finalized yet.
Actually, the language was agreed on, so that the language has been agreed on, so that relationship is in the final version of the OEM. It was voted on by the board and approved. So what hasn't been approved is the grace period yet. Everything else has been approved.
No, it hasn't.
I just talked to Ralph the other day. He said it was now approved. You're saying it's not? I'll need to follow up with Ralph. One item we are putting in there for the originating manufacturer does certify is that they can make the choice to be invisible in the public portion of the search database, the interface with the public. They can choose to be invisible. They wouldn't show up.
Okay, thank you.
We'll get some clarity for you.
For my question.
Yeah, hi, this is Jim Forte from Assa Abloy. And further to that, I have a question. If the product is manufactured by a third party under contract, and the OEM owns the design and controls the bill of materials, does that still, are they allowed to submit that on their own, or do they still have to have the manufacturer do it?
Michael, you're on. I believe you can, but I'll let Michael confirm that one. Michael Tierney? Are you on mute, Michael? I believe under that circumstance you can, but I will double check. I thought Michael was still on the line. I know we talked about it.
Any other questions?
Erica, this is Jeff Trull with Assa Abloy. When you're registering, as far as manufacturer users, can more than one person register?
Yes, and I think Larry would probably be a better person to answer that question, but yes, there can be more than one user associated with a given manufacturer or brand. So if there are many people that should be using the system, they can all use it. They don't have to use a shared account. And as long as you have the same permissions as your colleague, you should both be able to see each other's submissions too, to help with redundancy. Larry, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah,
Any other questions?
Nope. Just a comment for Karen. This is Bob. I'm sorry, Karen, you are correct. It has been passed. There's some other additional discussion behind it.
The additional discussion behind it is the effective date of the OM, which was suggested to be to go out with the invoicing from BHMA, which would be, it would have to be signed and returned by the 1st, and the other item is the grace period for the situation with the originating manufacturer. And that is, we were discussing the 1 year, it's still up in the air on what the decision on that date would be. That's why I'm suggesting people pay attention when any emails about the OM come out, operations manual come out. Those are the 2 items still associated with the operations manual. But the rule is in place and been approved. Thank you.
Okay. I think we have time for maybe one more question. Oh yeah, Michael.
Erica, yeah, it was very frustrating. I was trying to help with that question, and either I was on mute, I couldn't get off mute. My phone looked like I was off mute, but I wasn't. So just for the record, I think we cleared it up, but is there still a question for me? I can answer it.
Yes, there's still a question from Assa Abloy from Jim on third-party contracts when a originating manufacturer is purchasing an item that and they own the design.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I was trying to. We probably didn't talk about that as an exception, so the answer is there is no provision for that, and it's still the manufacturer. I mean, if we have to bring that up as another wrinkle, we can, but keep in mind that this whole thing was done to have better control. The person that's manufacturing the product has other responsibilities besides just testing it that are part of the program. So the feeling is there's more integrity to the program if the manufacturer is attesting to everything in the operational manual and is doing its own testing. And then the OEM or the person that's relabeling it They just need an engineering evaluation. And for all we knew, that's pretty much how things worked until, as many things with this program, we dig up other things that we hadn't thought of. But it's in the operational manual. It's required. We can check on that wrinkle for you. I don't know if it's going to matter or not. And as Karen said, there's a grace period. So this should be able to get worked out. That's it.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining today. Please feel free to reach out to Larry or others about any questions, and I'm happy to help. I will also be at the BHMA fall meeting in a couple weeks to help answer questions too. So feel free to reach out to me to schedule some time to talk through your submission examples if that's helpful. Larry, was there anything else you wanted to add before we end?
No, that's it. Just thank you to everyone for attending. And also, as Karen said, we want to start moving your product into the new database. So you've received the training. Again, use the resources that you have available, and let's start moving the products into the new database. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right.